Well, we have the latest low pressure area off the mid Atlantic coast that's bringing rain and in some elevated areas, some snow to the northeast. That'll be moving away later tonight and Monday. And then we'll sort of put it in cruise control until the end of the week when it will start to turn rather cold for Friday night and lasting into Sunday. There are all sorts of things running around weather-wise that we'll take a look at as far as the long range is concerned, and we're going to do that right now on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast on the Sunday, the 28th, the 28th of January. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. You get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast, and if you use the coupon code Winter2324, you will get
10% off. 10.
yes.
Yes.
So a big good evening to everybody. Just a scheduling note. Tomorrow night, Joe and I will be taking the night off. So after tonight, we will be back on Tuesday. It's tomorrow is you know Monday, and I have to be honest. I had a great birthday yesterday, Joe. Great
Well,
birthday.
before you continue, my dog, Mr. Sweeney, and his friends thought that they would record something for you to be played right here on our Joe and Joe channel at this moment in time. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Welcome.
Yeah, it was a fun day. It was also my granddaughter's birthday a few days ago, so we had one big tea party for our birthdays, and then went out to dinner last night, which was really nice with my brother and my sister and my sister-in-law's family. So that was wonderful, and I'm exhausted. I am exhausted. I drove 2 hours last night in pouring rain, which was not fun, especially after you have a full stomach on uh, a cowboy ribeye. That was that was a bit cooked Pittsburgh style, and it was delicious. So um, I think tomorrow will be a good day to just sort of lay back and take a day off and be done with it. Welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight. Thank you, by the way, for a number of you who have sent me birthday wishes or posted birthday wishes on YouTube or on various other platforms. Uh, thank you so much for that. Most appreciated, of course. And big welcome to those of you who are watching tonight, but not on the chat board. Just make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss us. We're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. with that exception for tomorrow. And of course, turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And if you like the show, hit the like button because we love it when you like us. And David Fuller bangs the tip jar. He's the first one to do it. Thank you for the birthday wishes, David. Most appreciated. So I got a couple of interesting. Uh, I saw a couple of interesting things today, weather-wise. First off, uh, you know, I've oftentimes, Joe, I've pontificated as I do about the pattern change you want, the pattern change you get are not necessarily the same thing. So it would be a huge mistake for somebody to say that uh, we've been in one pattern since since we started back in December. It's changed a couple of times, and now it's changing again to something completely different, and that too brings about a lot of questions in terms of what's going to come out of it. At first glance, you might look at it and say, "Oh my, this could turn this certainly could be a stormy pattern." Um, but there are a lot of ways that it won't be, and that's one of the things I want to get into tonight. So um, there's that, and I found this. I got this on Twitter today. don't remember who posted it, but thank you to whoever it was that posted this because it was very insightful in a few ways. So the I'm going to put up on the screen here. This is these are Joe the seasonal snowfall totals so far through January 27th. Okay, and they are ranked from highest to lowest. But what's interesting about it is with these numbers is is you get the seasonal total, and then you look at the snowfall departures to date, and more than half of the cities that are on here as they're ranked um, by the total snowfall, and these are all cities that most weather people will recognize. That there are more of these cities that are below normal than there are above normal. So, and in the top 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those cities are actually above normal snowfall for their season to date. Four of them are below normal. Okay. Which is odd because normally when you would see something like this, you would tend to see snowfall departures all be above normal. But it goes to show that the lack of snowfall, especially because of December, where very few places got snow, the lack of snowfall across the United States is not something that's centered just on the Northeast and the northern Mid-Atlantic states. It's pretty much everywhere. I mean, here's just to run off a few. Juneau, Alaska is number one. They're 89.7 inches for the season so far. That's 36.4 inches above normal. Anchorage, Alaska is number two, 87.7, and they're
Wow.
40 inches above normal. Number three is Marquette, Michigan at 63.2. That is 43.1 inches below normal. I mean, that tells you something right there. And there's a lot of that. Buffalo is number four, 52.9 minus 4.6. Fairbanks, Alaska is 52.9, up plus 10.1. Then you have Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, 22.1 inches below normal at 52.5. Caribou, Maine, 48.3 is 10.9 inches below normal. And Muskegon, Michigan is 43.6, which is minus 10.6 below normal. And the one that really stands out to me out of all of this is Syracuse, New York, because Syracuse is one of the snowiest cities in the country annually, if you go by their normals. Uh, 27 inches for Syracuse so far, Joe. 43.2 inches
Wow.
below average.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, I mean, the above normals are clustered in Iowa, Idaho, parts of Illinois, where else? Uh, Norfolk, Nebraska makes this list, and everybody else, it's a wide variety of cities all over the place. And I'm sure if we extended this list, you'd find a lot more interesting facts about how many of these cities in places that normally get snow are below normal. So it ain't just us, folks. It's everybody.
It is truly amazing, especially with that situation in Syracuse, which normally fights Buffalo for the Golden Snow Shovel Award in New York State every year. And to see them so far below normal in terms of snow. I mean, Buffalo's only, he said, 4.6 inches below normal, but Syracuse, 43.2 inches. That's incredible.
Yep,
Really is.
sure is. Ken Musillo, thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight, and also Frank Scalera, and thank you for the birthday wishes. Thank you for hitting the super chat tip jar. Uh, Always appreciated. We appreciate everybody's generosity. I'm looking at this week ahead, which uh, now we're into a new type of pattern, one that is got the mean trough position along or just off the East Coast. And that's going to mean a couple of things. It's probably going to mean that Much of this week is going to be dry. There's a diver that's coming down from the Great Lakes that's going to dive all the way into the southeast U.S. So we're not going to get much of anything from that. And then on Friday, after a cold front passes, we're going to get a fairly strong shot of cold air that's going to come down from northern Labrador and move down the east coast, and the East Coast will be the areas that would be cold. This is not going to be just like not going to be like that Arctic air mass that came down a couple of weeks ago, which covered everybody east of the Rockies. This is just going to keep most of the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states, and probably the Southeast to an extent as well, keep them below normal temperature wise. Uh, but it's also going to wind up suppressing any weather systems to bring any precipitation of consequence for this coming week.
Yes, in fact, there is going to be some kind of a storm system at the end of the week, but it's going to be way, way south across the southeastern states and never will even be able to get anywhere near us. But we will be engaged in some very cold weather with the upper level winds, I notice, Joe, coming in from the north and northeast across across our area for the early part of next week, the 6th of February. Just looking ahead on some of the long range maps, the upper level maps. So, indeed, it will be. I guess you could say that this week, before that front arrives, the warmest day of the lot will probably be ahead of the front on Thursday when temperatures may actually get to the mid 40s, which doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot, but that's still for this time of the year about 8 or 9 degrees above normal. And then the bottom falls out of the thermometer after the front moves on by. And hey, by the way, that front, as it moves through early on Friday morning, may provide perhaps a brief shower, maybe, but also probably will be accompanied by quite a bit of cloud cover. And so that would probably mean that Puxatawny Phil on Friday morning will not see his shadow, which, if I'm correct, means that the groundhog will declare winter is officially over and spring is about to begin. If you want to believe that, you take that into consideration with a rodent making the weather forecast.
With a damn good agent.
Yes.
Excuse me. Yes, that's indeed the case. So let me bring the surface map up. So we talked about this last week with this weather system, and I was kind of putting the kibosh on this going back almost a week ago with regards to what was going to happen and how models were handling this. This is the surface map from 5 o'clock this afternoon. There was a primary low earlier today in West Virginia that has now given way to the secondary low, which is sitting east of the Delaware coast by, I don't know, maybe about 100 or 120 or so miles. And, one of the things I was pointing out was the fact that, the models were trying to build a big high, bringing it down from eastern Canada. And you can see it centered over James Bay, I'm sorry, over Hudson Bay late this afternoon with temperatures running between minus 15 and minus 25 in a lot of places. But guess what? As models love to do, they like to bring that cold air down faster, and the high was forecast to be a strong one going into Quebec. Well, didn't quite get there. And while you're getting air that's coming down from eastern Canada that's getting involved with this system, it's just not that cold. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers here on the Canada side of New York State and Vermont, Joe. It's in the low and mid 30s for highs. Um, and it's mostly low and mid 30s across New York State and Vermont, New Hampshire. You got to go into Maine to find even a couple of 20s. So there just was not going to be enough cold air with this because you needed that high to come down and you needed it to time perfectly with this low, and that was asking a lot. Um, and was what was particularly a tip off that it wasn't going to happen was when it shows up. When something shows up that looks perfect at 144 or 168 hours, that's a clue right there that it's not going to be that way. And that's,
Never is.
no, what you want to see is that it's not perfect and that there's a possibility that the models aren't strong enough with the high, that they're not, far enough south with the high, maybe they're overdeveloped with the low. You want to see an imperfect upper air and an imperfect surface because that gives you room to work with, and at least you can wait for the next two or three runs to see, okay, which way is this going? But when they show perfect progs that far out, you always have to look at them with suspicion and with skepticism.
Absolutely. You see something 7, 8, 10 days out and look at it, you just absolutely know that it's going to be something other than what you're looking at. It's a, I think you made a reference to this many years ago, Joe. Progs that are 10 days out should better be called the science fiction prog.
Well, I mean, essentially that's the case. Yes, um, they you have to recognize, the key when you're forecasting this sort of stuff is you have to recognize what the pattern is. If you don't, if all you're doing is looking at maps, that doesn't do you any good. And here's another thing, also, by the way, um, that I want to bring up. I'm just going to come back full screen for a moment. Uh, if any if it and the snow weenies are just going to blow me off on this. They don't want to hear it. Okay, they just don't want to hear it. All right, but um, I'm not even talking about necessarily in the long range, but just in the short range. In the short range, those snowfall forecast maps are almost useless, Joe. Almost useless. I was looking at some of the guidance last night for today. The HRRR, which is its super short range model, uh, and the NAM, not so to an extent, the NAM, but yeah, the GFS as well. Throwing out these numbers down at the coast of 4, 5, and 6 inches in some places, and it's like it's not going to happen. I don't to use those maps as a forecast. They're fun to look at. I get it, and if you're going to look at them, you got to also match it up with what was going on. And when you looked at the NAM in particular, when you looked at the NAM boosters yesterday, where all of a sudden, we started going from, you know, boundary level temperatures that were near freezing to +1, +2. That was a telling sign that this was not going to be, that nothing was going to happen. And we basically said that on Thursday that nothing much was going to happen near the coast. Uh, but that certainly was a telling. I mean, I saw people still last night talking about uh, you know snow accumulation in places that weren't going to see a thing. Okay, and again, they're not going to want to hear it. No, no, the 10 days got 25 inches in Richmond. The European 10 day, I think on Saturday had or Friday, whatever it was. I think it was Saturday had had 25 inches with a 962 low just east of eastern North Carolina, and or something along those lines, and it had 25 to 30 inches across Virginia. And of course, on the very next run, it was gone. But yeah, it's I'm preaching to the choir here, essentially.
We were forecasting was so much more innocent back in 1978 with the blizzard of 78. I mean, none of us had ever seen a scenario where there was the potential more than 24 hours in advance of up to 2 feet of snow. We never saw anything like that. Now, with these models, the new technology of the 21st century, it seems like almost every other week, one model or another model is going to put down, 1 to 2 feet of snow for our area. And you've learned, I hope we've learned, that after a while, you just simply don't want to believe that until it's literally right up close to you. So,
I know.
mm,
Maggie P, thank you for hitting super chat tonight. I'm pointing out that Denver is also below average with snowfall, and they could use a snowstorm. Understood. No cold air out in the west, relatively speaking. And William Uber, thank you for hitting super chat, and thank you also for the birthday wishes. Um, yeah, it's you know I had more success. I had more success looking at what the precip totals were and just doing my own math, trying to figure out what the snow ratio was going to be, trying to figure out what the amount of precip was going to fall in a certain area, and that was where I got my, I would get my numbers from. And it's an old, piece of paper and pencil type of calculation, but it works far better. And a lot of times, by the way, because you don't always see this necessarily on the tropical tidbits map, but if you look at some of the other ones, uh, they'll put these 10-to-1 amounts, and then I'll run then I'll say, okay, well, let me look at what's going on with the surface flow. So I'll run the surface map with the precip or the radar presentation, and a lot of times it's putting up numbers based on the fact that it's got sleet overhead or freezing rain overhead. It just takes that number. It doesn't um what's the word? It doesn't make the distinction between precip type. It's like it lumps frozen and freezing into one group, and you get these crazy numbers that just don't make any sense.
But people will believe them.
Correct.
As
And people post them and people believe them, and you get blamed for them even though you washed your hands of it a long time ago and you have nothing to do with it. So
you know,
there.
it's like what Alan Casper said many years ago. Some forecasters, unfortunately, forecast with their heart, not with their heads.
Uh, Adam Lowe asked a question tonight. I had it up here before. He asked me, do I think that Central Park will have above normal snowfall since uh, it seems like they're not even going to be able to get to 10 inches. I will tell you this. Well, look, a window can always open up at any time. You get that one window that opens up and then you
Oh
get
yeah,
something out of it. So that certainly could happen. And there's plenty of time for it to happen more than once. On the other hand, um, uh, this was another thing I saw on Twitter today that somebody posted that so far this decade, which started in 2020 or the winter of 2020, 2021, we've had two winters where we've had single digit in New York City anyway. We've had two winters where we've had single digit seasonal snow totals. Okay, in no other decade had we had three single digit winters. Okay, so there's something for everybody to root for. That if we don't get whatever the number is now, so we're looking for 7.75 inches to get to 10, whatever it is. So if we don't get to 7.5, this will be the first time that we would have had three winters where the snowfall was in the single digits in New York City in its weather history.
yeah.
And I'm sure the snow weenies really are cheering for that one.
I remember that we had a situation where we strung together what 3 or 4 consecutive winters at
40s.
the park with 40 inches, and now all of a sudden we're on the other side of the coin, so to speak.
Mhm. Christopher, oh
Yeah, I was
God,
trying to figure out how you would Suzuki,
Sazik,
Suzuki. I don't know.
Sazik. Just tell me, Chris, if I'm close. But thank you for hitting the tip jar. Uh, Thank you very much for hitting super chat and for the happy birthday. Most appreciated. All right, let's go back to the maps, and I'm gonna go to let's look at the watches and warnings map because there are a few, and of course where those watches and warnings went up tells you right off the bat that these are elevation driven snows. We've got winter weather advisories in counties in southern New York and northernmost PA, right into the northeast corner, and up in the Catskills. I think there's one county, the one that where Hunter Mountain is, where they have a winter storm warning. Then you've got nothing from the Hudson River east to the Massachusetts line. Then you go into the Berkshires, and we've got winter storm warnings actually for a good number of counties in western and central Massachusetts, southern Vermont, and southern New Hampshire. I was noticing Worcester today was doing moderate snow for hour after hour after hour. I don't know uh, what the snow totals are. I did see Boston. Let's see if they got a public information statement. They do not. I did see one earlier at 1:30 this afternoon that in northern Connecticut, north of 84, in and around Hartford and points northward, most places who had anywhere from a coating to a couple of inches. But again, it's all about elevation with this.
Hey, Joe, I just wanted to back up a minute or two here. What you were talking about in terms of snowfall amounts of less than 10 inches, we have never. I'm taking a quick perusal at the Central Park records. Now, we have never had back-to-back years at Central Park with less than 10 inches of snow, unless you know of a case otherwise.
No, no, we haven't had back to back. Not that I know of.
Right. Right. So we had 2.3 last year,
Right.
and we had 17.9, which was below normal the previous year. But we've never had, and I brought this up back in the late summer and early fall, that usually when we have years like last year with 2.3 inches, that the following year we don't necessarily, go above normal, but we certainly go far and above from the previous year. And that was I was saying. I was saying, well, we had 2.5, 2.3 inches last year. We certainly are going to see a lot more than that this year. And so far, that has not even been close to living up to that. And in fact, I must tell you that we will make it through the end of January without any snow. If there's ever a year or ever a winter where we might actually do it, that is put together back-to-back years with less than 10 inches, this might be the year. But then again, this may also be the winter where we go along the same way that we've always have. And then, as was the case in 2016, we had one gigunda storm out of left field, which came along and dumped, 27 inches on us. Had we not had that storm, we would have had only 2 or 3 inches for the whole season. So one storm can do it. One storm, although you have to hit it just right, can bring everything back to normal or near normal. But so far, there's no sign of anything like that in the foreseeable future. Maybe not necessarily February, maybe March, which has been well known in other years for producing gigunda storms and snow events, will do it. But well, I tell you, it's like a desert for snow lovers. If
It,
you
it really is. And it's again, it's not just here, it's everywhere. I mean,
everywhere.
yeah, and relative to normal, when you look at what's fallen in New England, when you look at what's fallen in some areas of the northern Great Lakes, the lake effect areas, there's just it's just been totally subpar. We have some winter weather advisories up for actually even a couple of winter storm warnings up for the mountains in western North Carolina. Not quite to me though, but Gatlinburg on the Tennessee side, which is a very, very popular tourist destination. They're under a winter storm warning, and north and west of Asheville, um, we're really reaching here. I mean, the fine winter weather going on at the end of January, excuse me. But we have this sort of narrow area here in the southern Appalachians, and I'm always just barely to the south of that. Although I will tell you, it is blowing away here. We've got wind advisories up for much of North Georgia, Northeast Georgia, and up into western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. We've had some gusts here of 35 to 40 miles an hour. And here's our, Mr. Storm system here with the low offshore, clouds back to the lakes. And I was looking at the precip field this morning with the rain coming up, and looked like there was a band of sleet on the northern edge of that. Now we're sort of waiting for the stuff that's to the northwest to just pull down to the southeast and finish this off. But yeah, I thought I put in maybe the chance that somebody mixes in, maybe a couple of flakes here, a couple of ice pellets there, for much of eastern PA to southern New England, unless you're in elevated areas of the Hudson Valley, or if you're in elevated areas in northern Connecticut, and points northward, you're really not going to see much of anything here.
Yeah, I in fact said last night I didn't bother doing a snow. Did you do a snow map for your
I
client?
did, I did. Would you like to see it?
Yeah, I'd like to. I did
So
not bother to do one at all. What I did was I just simply said 1 to 4 inches of snow north of Interstate 84, and the higher amounts, especially for places above 1,000 foot elevation. As we've been saying all along, this would be an elevation driven type of snow. Uh, but
I did this map on Thursday, and I never changed it. I didn't. This was my only call, and I don't know. I think it's pretty. It's coming out pretty good. I just put that rain mix area between the black line and the blue line, and 1 inch. I put an inch line at Southern Dutchess County near Poughkeepsie. I mean, I did notice that it did snow there. I also saw that Carmel had 3/10 of an inch of accumulation
okay, so
this
for
morning.
you, what you put for me was rain, min, snow.
No, that's an X.
Mix snow.
Yeah, it's lying over a county line, so it looks like. When I first did that, I looked at it and said, I didn't hit the K. The K is not anywhere close to the X key, but that's
Uh-huh.
actually an X. Yeah, so I put rain. And I verbally said that would be an area that would mix with some rain or a mix or maybe a little bit of snow. Uh, but the 1 inch line I had outside of northern New Jersey, Southern Dutchess County. I mean, I probably didn't get anything over there, and points northward. And then I got the 4 inch plus in the elevated areas, northern Sullivan County, northeastward into Massachusetts. I went for higher elevation, 4 inch plus. So yeah, I think that works.
I think it did. As far as here at my house, I'm at an elevation of about 500 feet. And I thought when I walked the dog this morning in the midst of light to moderate rain, I thought that I might have seen 3 or 4 big wet snowflakes fall, but I wasn't really sure. And on my deck, my wooden deck, which usually is the first place to accumulate any kind of freezing or frozen precipitation, I called Renato over and said, "Look at this. It looked like something, some kind of icy precip had tried to accumulate or not accumulate, but to fall, and there was some traces of that. But really, nothing going on here of any great concern in terms of snow. We picked up about, and I haven't looked at the rain gauge for a while, but last time I looked, we had like something like 1.3 inches of rain here. So it came down pretty good. We had certainly a significant amount of rainfall, but nothing in terms of significant snow. Now, to the north, where my daughter is up in New Paltz in Ulster County, she said it was snowing steadily at one point, but really not accumulating to any great degree. Of course, we still are not done with this precipitation yet. We may still see it continue through overnight, but it's doubtful if we're going to see very much more in terms of snow or freezing precipitation on top of what has already fallen, wherever it has fallen, with this particular storm.
I'm looking at some observations. You can see the radar on the screen. That most of the precip is east and north of New York City, and there's sort of a little arm that's pivoting southeastward. There's some heavy rain that's going on right around the Washington D.C. Baltimore area. You can see it there clustered, well, not so much near Baltimore, but more toward the Virginia state line. So Washington D.C. and then on the Virginia side, that's moving southeastward. And then there's light precip back through Ohio and West Virginia down into eastern Kentucky and into western North Carolina. Some of that is in the form of snow. I'm just looking at some of these observations. You know, First of all, for the ones that are snowing, no one is reporting any restricted visibility at all. So we're talking light stuff here. Albany is 34. I mean, I watched their obs today, Joe. They were 36 in light snow, 30, 35, 36, 34 right now. Glens Falls 32 light snow, mixed precip at Poughkeepsie, light rain at Newburgh, White Plains drizzle and 37, New York City light rain and 38. In central New York, light rain in Fulton, Syracuse, light snow 32, Rome, light snow 32, Elmira 35, light snow, Binghamton 33, with light snow. So I mean, there's not much going on observation wise.
100. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. I'm going to check Boston real quick. Snowing in Boston. Again, all the snow. Okay, Fitchburg in
And you know, the
Western
funny thing
Massachusetts.
is, Joe, I know that when it turns, after that front moves by on Friday morning, and it does turn quite cold here again later Friday and Saturday and Sunday. By the way, not just cold, but also wind. I
Wind.
could see winds are going to be blowing here, especially Saturday and Sunday. So there'll be a chill factor, a most significant one, Saturday and Sunday of next weekend. But I just know that when it does turn cold next weekend, that there are going to be innumerable snow lovers out there saying, it's a waste. It's all this wonderful cold air. Where is the storm now? Why is it when we get cold we don't get the storm? And I know that's going to be the war cry next week when it does turn much colder once again.
Looking at observations, it's snowing in Boston, 34. Again, no restrictions in visibility. Lawrence, Bedford, all light snow. Beverly, Marshfield, Plymouth, Taunton, New Bedford, all raining. Worcester is light snow. They had moderate for a few hours earlier. Fitchburg is 3/4 and Pittsfield 1 mile. I mean, I always like to look at the sequence and see what we used to call the sequence, but to look at these obs just to see what's going on, uh, to get an idea. 'Cause sometimes the radars can be a little deceptive. You think it's snowing hard and it's not, or you think it's not snowing hard and it is. So it's always good to look at the observations first and the radar second. And it's just, I mean, this is just not. Yeah, and up in New Hampshire, Joe, in southern New Hampshire, it's in the mid 30s there with snow falling. I mean, come on, you know, you're not going to be, you can't do anything with that. Much of the country's pretty quiet. We've got some precip coming in the Pacific Northwest as the next round of energy heads in there. No severe weather to worry about for the next 3 days. In fact, no thunderstorms are in the forecast for the next 3 days across the United States. WPC's liquid precip for this. Now, some of this in the east is obviously we've got precip that's going on overnight, but it's mostly less than a quarter of an inch, in some cases less than a tenth. Now, the exception is in West Virginia, southeastern Tennessee, and down in western North Carolina, where you see these stripes of a half to 3/4. So that's why we have the winter storm warnings up and the winter weather advisories up. And we also have this diver coming down for the middle part of the week. Gulf moisture back through Texas and Louisiana in the Gulf states. That's going to probably come later this week as well. And in the West, very, very wet in the West, from San Diego and even points further south all the way up the coast. And then you start going up to San Francisco and points northward. You're talking about several to many inches over the next 7 days, and also some ample snows in the northern Rockies, down into, well, ample precipitation anyway, down into Nevada, Utah, and even into Arizona. And as far as snow is concerned, this is overnight. This is the probability for at least an inch. This is, you know, really reaching here. But you can see the probability for at least an inch. You got to go pretty far up to the Hudson Valley in order to see that. And let's go to the west and see what's going on in the west, which right now is nothing. But I'm gonna change this to 4, and I'm gonna go to the 72-hour forecast because actually most of the guidance in the west is going to be after we get through February. So tonight, Monday's the 29th, Tuesday's the 30th, Wednesday is the 31st. So
We'll
this
move
is
into
through what?
February on Thursday.
Right.
Yes.
So this is through Wednesday night. So any of the snow that's forecast in the west, and there will be some, is in the long range. And of course, here's the probability for at least two. They've got an area of 50%. Not, I mean, it's like maybe a couple of hour drive from my house to get up, north and west of Asheville. And I'm not, and I can guarantee you, I ain't a doing that. So let's look at what's going on in the upper air because the pattern's changed. It's just changed into another one that is not going to be favorable for snow lovers. And I'll just roll this back. We're going to look at the Canadian tonight. and then we'll switch over to the other ones. Um, so, because they all pretty much have the same idea. This is today, and you can see the upper low and the trough that's moving offshore, and there are a couple of short waves. You know, we've got this northwest flow, so there's a short wave here, and there's another one probably further north and west. That short wave that's over Lake Winnipeg is going to be the diver because of the fact that the northwest flow is going to dominate, and you see that upper low that forms. Now, the thing is, Joe, there's nothing for this to work on. This first system's taking everything and leaving a fairly dry atmosphere.
Right.
Uh, otherwise you would probably have something more vigorous to talk about, but it's not. That dives southeastward. I mean, it doesn't even make the turn until it gets off the North Carolina coast, and then it starts to make the turn. I mean, that tells you how far, where the trough is. And then as we go through the rest of the week, we get this omega block that develops, and another short wave is going to come down in the eastern part of the United States, which the Canadian is underdoing. So I'm going to go back to the GFS, and the European and the Icon all have a much stronger shortwave that comes through on Thursday and into Friday. And you see it there. The northern part of the jet stream strengthens, and that brings down, this is where we're getting cold air that's coming down from, you know, north central and northeastern Canada that's going to be coming down into the eastern part of the United States, but it's not going to come down in the plains. It's not going to come down to Texas. You know, so it's just in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states and maybe bleeding down into the southeast. But we do have a lot of this energy that's in the west. That's all going to undercut uh, what's going on up in Canada because you've got this big, blocking high that's developed uh, north of Lake Winnipeg, I mean, which is really odd. And you got this energy undercutting. Now, the thing is, if you've got a deep upper low sitting over Maine and Atlantic, Canada next weekend, then any energy that is down there in Texas, and that's a fairly wrapped up upper air system, is going to get squashed. There's no way it's going to be able to turn up the East Coast. Okay, so what you're going to need to happen is you're going to need to see this upper low pull out just enough to allow this to swing and turn, more northeast or even northward, which is what the European was trying to do Saturday on a couple of runs for Saturday and into last night, and then no, not last night. I think it was uh, Friday night and Saturday's day run. Um, But if you're going to have this big upper low, that's going to bring you down, all the cold air you want, but it's going to keep everything way to the south. Now, the only thing is the Canadian, and I said an earlier run of the European sort of tries to give you a little bit of room that system could maybe do something. And when we look at the surface on the Canadian run, you'll see that it has, it tries to take a low uh, across the South, but it has it up in Tennessee, and then it, sort of pivots and redevelops, and it actually brings snow up central New Jersey and the South Shore of Long Island, and brings something more significant to the Mid-Atlantic states. But you're, you know, I'm going to say I'm going to say the same thing I said last week going into this week about this weekend system. You're going to need to have a lot of things go right uh, for you snow lovers, you're going to need to have a lot of things go right in the upper atmosphere to pull this off. Because if that northwest flow is dominant, you're going to wind up with what the GFS has, which is a suppressed strong low in the Gulf of Mexico, and you see it there as a 993 low southeast of New Orleans, and it goes across Florida and goes straight east. Okay, while it stays just cold and dry starting from Friday through the weekend and probably into next Monday or Tuesday. So there are your choices, folks. You know what to look for. You want cold air. You want to have a flow of cold air, but you can't have it too strong from the northwest, or it's just going to squash everything. And if I had to bet, Joe, I'd bet that that the GFS and the European runs today, which have the squashed look, are the ones that are going to wind up being correct.
Right now, you talk about the pattern. I would say that the folks uh, south of, let's say, the Mid Atlantic, down across the Carolinas and maybe even into Georgia, probably have a better shot at seeing significant snow early next week as opposed to here in the Northeast with that system that'll be moving across the Gulf coastal states and off of the north coast of Florida again early next week with all that cold air banked in over the mid Atlantic and northeastern states. Again, the cold air is just going to be too strong and probably will push that storm too far to the south for us. But maybe, just maybe, further south, folks in the Carolinas might actually get some snow out of this early next week.
Well, it's not impossible. Or the Tennessee Valley, they're on the northern fringe of this. I was kind of looking at that high, the way it builds down. That uh, this is one of those situations. Sometimes if it's far enough north, and there's enough low level cold air that gets down into the into the southeast of the North Georgia mountains and into Tennessee and south of North Carolina with that Gulf low, maybe there could even be some ice issues. I don't know, but that's such a long way away anyway. So um, in the meantime, uh, much of this week, if you look at it, not really much happens. This gets out of the way. The diver comes down and moves off the North Carolina coast and goes goodbye. Then you got the cold front that will come through sometime, maybe Friday or late Thursday night or late day Thursday. I don't know, depending on the timing. And, you know, 5/16 thicknesses down to almost down to northern New Jersey. I don't know. And
The potential for some kind of a snow event along the eastern seaboard, again, more likely mid Atlantic and southeast. I'm shaking my head saying to
right,
myself that I'm actually talking about that. But there is that potential. There's a lot of players on the field. They'll have to come together to make it happen. But it is possible, but only time will tell.
right. And I guess the fact that you have models that aren't really showing favorable scenarios is a far better thing than to have them printing out a snowstorm in the perfect spot 168 hours or more out
Yeah.
because it's not going to happen. So now you know what to look for. If you get the cold air in, if the upper low that's going to be in Atlantic Canada can pull out just enough to allow for some room, then something might happen around the 5th or the 6th. So
Here's something exciting to watch for, folks. Again, right now, and here we are. We're about 7-8 days away from uh, the time frame I'm talking about for early, like the 7th of February, and it seems to be suggesting snow for the Mid Atlantic and or the southeastern states. Now, what you folks have to hope for, those of you who are snow lovers and winter weather lovers, have to hope for is a trend, slowly but surely, with each passing model guidance run of taking that potential system in the southeast and moving it up a little closer, a little closer, a little closer, so that maybe by the end of this week, things may actually start looking exciting for our part of the country. Who knows? What we've been saying, though, is once you're 7 days or more, whatever you see being suggested on the long range maps usually does not tend to come to pass, that something different happens. Well, that's the only other option, Joe, is if it's going to be something different, instead of being crunched or smashed way off to our south, maybe bring it up a little bit and get everybody. And of course, naturally, if it starts coming north, you'll know what's going to happen for the New York tri-state area. Maybe heavy snow over Delaware or coastal
well,
Virginia. And meanwhile, for us, we're sitting here watching all of that going slithering off just to our south. So,
Washington, Philadelphia, and Baltimore are the three cities in the east that actually have near or slightly above normal snowfall for the day
that amazing.
for the winter to date.
So yeah, so maybe that's going to be the story. Maybe a week from now we'll be looking at a significant snowfall for Washington, for Baltimore, and even as far north as Philadelphia and Atlantic City. And meanwhile, the folks up here in the New York area sit here and shake their heads and saying, no, it can't be happening again. And by the way, this pattern, Joe, very much would resemble what we went through during the winter of 72, 73. How many times did I used to come home from school, tune in 1010 Winds to listen to either Dr. Joel Myers or Elliot Abrams? And they were, I guess, snow lovers as well, talking about, well, unfortunately for all of you snow lovers, it's not going to happen, but there's going to be a lot of snow
All right.
for
Well, the big storm we've been talking about for the
the
last
big story. Yeah, exactly. That was
since Charlemagne took the throne in 38 in 383 A.D.
oh,
or
I
whenever it was.
no, I used to listen. I was as one of my hobbies is when I was much younger was, and it's still a hobby in a way, is DXing. What is DXing? That's listening to radio stations hundreds of miles away, and at night WBT in Charlotte, North Carolina, would boom in. And I remember they got something like 20 inches of snow that winter of 72, 73. And I'm sitting there and almost like tears are coming down my eyes. They're getting all the good stuff, and we have nothing. Nothing. We ended up with like 2.8 inches of snow for the whole winter. And this could very well happen again this winter. It could happen again next week. We'll see. Not this week, but a week from Monday and Tuesday, we could be looking at a storm that is bringing all the white stuff to places that normally don't get all the white stuff. We'll see.
Leon Probitsky, thank you for hitting the tip jar and for the happy birthday. Thank you very much. Very generous. Most appreciated. You have Briller Jeopardy, or do I?
I think I may have it. I will check. Let me check. Let me check.
Yes, you should have it.
Yes, this was sent to me on Thursday night at 10:35 by Mr. Briller. So I do have it. And it says, "Hi Joe, on this Briller Jeopardy, we're talking about the average low temperature in January." I suppose this is going to be the last time we'll have this particular category because January is going to be over soon. But the average low temperature in January for the following 5 cities. Wait a minute, did we do this? Maybe the first city is Dallas. Did we do this already?
I don't
The
think
average
so.
low temperature in January for the following cities, leading off with Dallas,
What's the next city?
Denver,
I don't think so.
and Detroit. All right,
Oh
well,
yeah, I think we did. And then after Detroit, what was after that?
Honolulu.
Honolulu. It does sound familiar. When was this? When did he send you that message?
This was Thursday at 10:35 p.m.
Oh, well, maybe it was for December that we did did it. Now we're doing it
All
for
right.
January.
Okay. All
All
right.
right. So
Okay. So Dallas,
Dallas.
average low temperature in January in Dallas, Texas.
I'll say 38.
Oh my God, here he goes again, ladies and gentlemen. I remember the last time I was on and doing this, I think you got 3 out of 5 right on the
Yeah,
nose.
I
Like,
did.
kidding.
38. Sorry, the chat board folks. I'm killing your fun. Sorry, what's the next one?
Denver,
Denver
average low.
always gets me. I don't, because they get such, they can get such volatility sometimes. I'll say, I'll say 24.
Oh, a little bit too on the warm side, Joe.
Okay.
Denver, according to Krishnapedia, 38, much too warm for that. Average low temperature in January. Helen
Um,
Bertona, 42. It's the average low, not the average high, ladies and gentlemen.
Maggie P says 17. Timothy Veltman says 21.
Maggie, you were in snake country with that 17.
Leon Probitsky said 18.
And Leon got it.
And so did
Eight,
Kenneth Rosenberg, 18.
yes,
And so did Frank
18 degrees.
Scalera.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So what's next?
The Motor City, Detroit.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 25.
Nope, a little too warm, Joe.
A little too warm. Okay. Christina Petey said 23. Miss
Still
Bl-
up in the
Miss
warm
Blue
spot.
Ocean said 23. Rich Rothmansky says 19.
But
Da-
Leon does it again. Leon with 19.
oh, okay. And Rich,
Oh,
19. Frank
yeah.
Scalera, 19.
William Huber, 231. No,
Right.
that's
David Fuller, 19.
so there you are.
There you go.
And how about Honolulu?
Honolulu, I don't, I've only been there once, and I really don't, you know, it's one of those places you really don't pay attention to except when they have the bad weather. So I'll say 65.
Close, but no cigar.
Leon
Leon
says
Pravitsky,
64.
Leon Pravitsky, close, but not quite. Now, Helen Bertona, you're so
At
close, it could have been Snake.
66.
And
And Maggie P's at 68.
Christopedia, you're in snake country as well. So if it isn't 66 and 68, then it has to be
67.
67 degrees. Yes. And how about Houston, Joe?
Houston.
Houston.
All right, so I said, what did I say? 38 for Dallas?
You said 38? Yes. You
All
hit it
right,
on the
so
nose
I'll
with
say, for Houston, I'll say 44.
oh, close, but no cigar.
Okay. Um, well, so Timothy 57 is not going to be it if
That's
44
not going to
was
be it.
close.
That's not going to
The
cut it.
low, guys, the low. Houston is not like Miami. Jason Barry, 42. David Fuller, 47. Chuck Cardillo,
Cardillo,
46.
however, hit it with 46.
Okay.
And now for our bonus
Yeah,
question.
what mountaintop are we looking at?
No, but it could just as well be a mountaintop. The average low in Barrow, Alaska in January. The average low in Barrow.
I'll say -6.
Oh, Joe, my goodness. The skier would have fell right off the top of the summit.
Oh, it's too high?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't
Timothy,
know.
Timothy Veltman, you are in snake country. If it were a snake, it would have bit you at minus 23.
-23. Wow. Um, all right, so that means it's either -24 or -22. So William Hoover says -22, Rothmansky says -24, and David Fuller says -24.
Mr. Huber, you got it with minus 22. Ouch.
And there you have it. All
There you
right.
go.
So the models, our opinions of the models will be a mystery tomorrow because we're taking the night off. So we'll be back on Tuesday. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. Link is on the descriptor to this podcast. Use the coupon code WINTER2324 for anything you purchase, be it the weather station or any of the other gadgets and gizmos and lovely weather fashion that they have. Winter2324 will get you.
10% off.
All right.
And thank you for the 132 likes. And thank you again to David Fuller, Ken Musillo, Frank Scalera, William Huber, Maggie P., Leon Probitsky, and I hope I pronounced the name correctly, Christopher Senziak, for hitting the tip jar, mainly on behalf of Joe's birthday yesterday. Thank you very
65.
much. Oh, so
65. My
you're not
Medicare card kicked in. I'm not I'm okay with it. I'm
okay.
I'm still going up. I still have a certain, control of my senses and
Renata
and
Renata said
various bodily functions. I'm good.
Renata said to me, "Don't you dare mention Joe's age on the
Why?
show tonight." And I said, if I know Joe, he will just openly come out with it on his own. And you did.
I'm 65.
There you go.
No.
Welcome to the
Look,
Medicaid
exactly. Well, as still
Medicare
as
Medicare Society, not
look,
Medicaid.
Joe and I have both changed terrain a long time ago. We're on our and we're on our way to drizzle and fog.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
so Anyhow, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of truth in that statement too. The drizzle
Yeah.
and fog. How many times it's happened to me where I don't know about you, but like I've put things in the microwave that needed to go in the fridge, or I
Oh,
put things in the fridge that needed to go in the microwave.
funny.
Yes. Oh, and Timothy Veltman bangs the tip jar before we
Oh,
say goodnight. Thank you,
thank you.
Timothy.
Thank you, Tim.
And on that note, nighty night.
See you Tuesday, folks.